Today I'm going to be showing you how to fix the gauge cluster fuel and trip display if you see that some of the LCD, some of the display segments are missing or flickering, especially whenever it's cold. The problem is that there's wires on the circuit board, and the solder, whenever it gets cold, thermal expansion, the solder actually shrinks and pulls back, and it causes cracking, and then when it gets warmer, the solder expands and makes contact and it magically starts working again. So I'm going to show you how to pull the gauge cluster out and repair the solder. So to start, you're going to want a couple Phillips screwdrivers. There is a lever under the steering column that you can pull the lever so that you can move the steering wheel down. With that off, there are 3 screws to focus on. One right here, one right there. Go ahead and take out this screw. Then we're going to focus on this side panel. You can get your fingers underneath them doing the snaps. Okay. And pivot it out like that. This unveils another screw at the bottom. Now, grab underneath the cup holder, and on the right and on the left, there are 2 more snaps like that. A couple at the top. Whole piece come off. The instrument cluster, gauge cluster, is free. Be careful of the control stick, and then it'll start to come out. And there's a push tab right on the top, so push that down and pull that connector out. Okay, here we go. Let's take this thing inside and do the soldering repair. So start by removing the 7 screws. Watch out as you're pulling the top off for this little speaker wire or buzzer or something. Just carefully pull on the connector. Now there's 2 places that I've heard people say go bad. The first is this row of 8 connectors on the side, and this is where mine is bad. I can actually see some cracking on this guy, yeah. And the second place is this big connector. So what you want to do is get yourself some lead solder, and the lead solder will hold up to the expanding and shrinking with temperature, whereas the lead-free solder they use at the factory does not. So with your soldering iron, just reheat each connector in that row of 8, and then apply a little bit of solder. So it's hard to show on camera, but I touch the iron to the pin until I see it go shiny, and then while the iron is touching, I just tap the solder on, melt a little bit in, and then pull away the soldering iron and the solder. And that's it. I'm going to put this back together. So for this one, you would do the same thing. Mine looks good, so I'm not going to touch it. Let's put this thing back together. And go ahead and plug the connector back into the back. And you can actually test if the car now, but make sure that your display is functioning how you want. As you're putting the gauge cluster back in, there's two holes at the bottom. One's for a screw, one's for a little pin. A little pin on either side. I'll put the screws back in. So with this vent, you want to kind of get it lined up. There's an indexing pin there, and then give the top a push it downward a little bit and just get it ready to seat, and then give it a nice push back in the left and right. It'll snap right in, and then also at the bottom, snap, snap. And this piece, cover panel, because it has this back ridge, has to go in behind the rubber seal of the door.